Night had finally fallen, and everyone moved out to the backyard where there was a well-kept pavilion with a hearth along one side. They could even enclose 2 of the 3 open sides with heavy curtains to keep out wind or rain and to help keep in the heat of a fire. There were more than enough chairs and couches for everyone, and soon Benny, the groundskeeper, who Aaron quickly realized was a wraith, led a pair of vampires over to the pavilion. Aaron, Leo, and Katie all recognized Mark instantly. Katie gave him a wave, which he returned with a smile. The other vampire had been turned when he was in his 30s. He had red hair that was worn longer than what was normal, and had a walk that was measured and full of authority. That demeanor reminded Aaron of Ruth, who has been an aristocrat. Perhaps Mark's maker was from a similar background. She had learned that most vampires turn into humans for only a few reasons. Typically, they turn humans because the current era is becoming hard for them to keep up with the technology and customs. However, they also will turn humans if they see something special in a human that they want to cultivate, or as a favor. This companionship helps a vampire to maintain their humanity. A vampire that loses all of their humanity without something else to fill that void becomes a monster.
Good evening. My name is Finn Clancy, and some of you have met my child, Mark Benning. May we sit with you?
Finn asked. Aaron could hear a hint of an Irish brogue. Alpha Matthews gave the vampires a warning growl. Aaron was surprised and looked over to him. He was positioned so that Aaron could see him wink at the vampires, but Katie and her parents could not. Jacob took over, knowing that the werewolf needed to put on a show for those that could not be trusted.
Enough of that, Alpha. They are my guests, same as you. I would hate to have to ask you to leave. We are all here for the same purpose.
He quickly made introductions, and they all sat down. He gestured for Colby to begin speaking.
For our newcomers, I am an enchanter. We all know that the schools are both very careful to not have a vampire student and a werewolf student cross paths during their midterm and final exams for the survival course. What some of you may not know is that they bring in many enchanters such as myself, and yes, including myself, to ensure that the coordinates being chosen are not close enough for you to encounter each other. There is more than enough continent to ensure this is safe for everyone involved. And yes, we are also looking out for the kinds of dangers you are not prepared to face, such as a spiral dancer pack. This means that something very powerful had to twist fate in order for us to be able to make this mistake. Tonight, we are going to see if we can find out. I am going to need any mage with any ability in fate magic, which should be all of you, to join hands around me. My sister Susanna is going to help you all link minds to help you with the chant. Each of you will also be handed a foci, which will help increase your ability to boost my ability. I'm going to prepare the space to give us an additional boost.
Colby took his time marking the ground, and when he was finished, he handed out foci to everyone that would be participating. He sat in the circle he had made, but off to a side instead of the center, and placed a leather bag that jingled and jangled a little bit next to him. Susanna directed everyone to make a circle around Colby, and they linked hands. It was quiet for a few moments, and then they began chanting together. Aaron could feel the swirl of magic around and through her, and was high with the euphoria of so much magic being woven. She watched as Colby reached into his bag and threw some of the contents out onto the ground in front of him. Each time he would mutter and throw. He did this a total of 4 times, and Aaron realized it was once for each of them. A few moments after the last throw, Colby gestured to Susanna that he had the information he needed, and just like everyone else in the circle, she knew just when to end the chant. As soon as she did, she felt faint and stumbled, as did almost everyone else. Leo quickly steadied her and guided her to a seat. Once everyone was seated, Colby began to explain the reading.
The short answer is that it's the work of the Fae. They orchestrated the 2 teams to be close enough to each other to encounter each other if pushed in the right direction. And then they had the spiral dancers there to push the West Coast team in the direction of the East Coast team. The ultimate target was Aaron.
There were a few gasps, and Aaron started to feel nauseous.
They wanted Aaron to encounter specific wraiths, but I'm not entirely sure why.
I can answer that.
called a familiar voice. Aaron looked up to see Alpha Featherwind behind Ruth and Benny, who were trying to bar him from coming any closer to the rest of the group.
Who is that?
Finn asked. Aaron stood up and walked over to the three wraiths.
Ruth, Benny, he doesn't mean any harm, I promise. Alpha Featherwind, what are you doing here so far away from your haunt? This must have been very difficult.
At Jacob's nod, Ruth and Benny stepped aside.
I used a ley line. I think you would call it a coffin path.
Aaron's eyes widened. Just as ley lines were dangerous to the living due to the Fae, coffin paths were dangerous to the dead because they were frequented by other more dangerous dead and the Fae.
Don't be so concerned. I am not weak, and I have had a long time to make friends among the Fae. My friend guided me along the path to your home, which is a hub for many coffin paths.
You asked a boon of the Fae?
Finn surmised.
I did.
Featherwind replied.
But why?
Alpha Matthews asked.
She's just a child.
She's the strongest necromancer I've ever encountered, and I've met quite a few. Not to mention, she is among those who actually care about the dead, and don't look to just use them. She is exactly what we need right now. Have you not noticed the decline of the new moon wolves? How weak they are in comparison to all of the other phase wolves.
I've heard that new moon wolves were capable of much more than they can do now. I just thought it was our pack.
Matthews replied.
No, it is all packs. The decline is twofold. The ley lines used to be safe for us to use. Those paths are strong when the new moon wolves are strong. As they declined, and as key information was lost, the paths began to deteriorate. We used to be able to travel to other packs easily to find our mates. Instead, we have had to rely on mages to help us find our mates. This has created better ties with the mages, but we have also lost so much knowledge. I was a waning moon wolf in life. For our non-werewolves, that means that I was much like you, young man.
He gestured to Colby.
I could see the threads of fate and understand their movements. Understand that this did not change in death. I can still see the threads of fate, and I can even manipulate some of those threads. I would also be able to teach another waning moon wolf how to do these things. There are many new moon wolves like me and just like me. Without a necromancer to help give us form, we are invisible to most wolves unless we exert much energy. That energy is hard to replenish. Celine brought Aaron and Leo together to help heal our new moon wolves and reunite them with their ancestors who can teach them. I knew that I would need to be the one to help bridge the gap, and my anchors are nearly gone. I need the help of a necromancer to keep my anchors whole, so that I can enter into a contract with them, and then to help guide you to the dead that can help heal our new moon wolves. Aaron, you needed to meet the dead of the pack in the Sonoran Desert. They needed purpose, and there were some among the living you needed to meet. They would not have thought to combine their gifts in the way that will ultimately benefit you had they not met you. They are not yet ready to help you, so I will leave them unnamed until they are ready for you.
Featherwind sighed.
You will have much to speak about with your uncle, and hopefully for me, also your necromancer cousin. I am going home. I hope that I will see you at my burial mound soon.
To Aaron it looked like he folded and then disappeared, but Leo was near her and explained softly for her.
He entered a coffin path.
Hey everyone, hope you loved the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more awesome sci-fi content. You can also support us by hitting the thanks button or becoming a channel member. Your generosity helps us bring you more stellar stories. Every bit counts. Thanks a bunch.